Tonight's tutorial is something that I've been seeing quite a lot of recently with some online lessons, and they've been spending so much time on trying to drop and pop in the downswing. It was actually focusing so much attention in this aspect of the swing that they weren't actually achieving what they were intending because they didn't have the other phases. There were components missing. And so this is something I want to address in this tutorial, because what we're going to be looking at is how can you make your ideal backswing? How can you create the conditions, create all this potential energy to then fire it through that kinetic sequence? Because it's that chain that ultimately we need to optimize, but it's what's preceding the firing of that chain. And the backswing is something that often causes problems because people have been so obsessed with getting the club online, essentially manipulated their movement in such a contrived fashion that it's actually not natural. And in an effort to try and minimize error, they've actually taken away all their dynamism. And therefore that flow and that natural loading, unloading pattern that occurs when we're kind of hitting and throwing other objects, but in golf it seems to elude us. So why is that? We would never throw a ball thinking about how we're taking the arm back and kind of conceptualizing this and in what order, what sequence, and how much do we move it and in what direction, and how does that relate to where I want to go, and what speed, what arc, what swing length, where's the arc, where's the... It's like all this noise doesn't exist in these motions. So we've got to get back to natural movement. We've got to get back to these systems that are already there. We've just got to tap into it. And we're going to do this tonight from the ground up. What we're going to do first, I'm going to use a slider. Now, what you could do is get a piece of cardboard and just cut it out so it's bigger, than just slightly bigger than the foot, and on the carpet it's going to slide. I used a rotation disc earlier this evening in a lesson. As long as we're removing this friction with the ground, or as little friction as possible underneath your trail foot. So for me, right foot, trail foot, take your stance and just with your trail leg, just let it rotate. So what this is hip action. It's external hip rotation, internal, external. And it's this hip action that's going to be so important because that's going to help move the pelvis. And then let's introduce a drop and pop. So I'm going to drop first, and then I'm going to pop and twist the foot out. What I could do is when I drop now, I could twist the foot in with the drop and push off and twist it out. When I say push off, I'm pushing off to go up. If you've got a GRF system, you could use your rotation disc. Just put the rotation disc underneath the foot and you've got the same thing. Notice when my foot twists in, my hip goes out. There's a shift. That's a mass shift. You're going to see this in a golf swing. If you love the coaching and want to experience the effects of the training that you see with our pupils, you can purchase the GRFI system yourself by following the link in the video description. You'll get all the equipment and a 2-hour download covering all the fundamentals, exploring your movement and how you can use the ground and create those all-important ground reaction forces and transfer them through to clubhead speed and experience the gains that you're seeing in the videos. You'll see it with players. They're shifting. What they're doing is they're moving into an internal rotation. The pelvis is shifting towards the femur with a little shift. There's a bit of internal rotation which allows them to push off to get this external rotation. And what happens is sequentially the segments here are traveling faster as you move up the chain, and the pelvis rotates into the femur and we end up with internal rotation. So we're rotated into this kind of, they call it load in the hip, but really it's just getting stretched through this sequential rotation in this clockwise direction. What's rotating this way, ultimately through the elasticity of the system, can recoil back. Think about throwing. You don't keep your knee in, keep the femur internally rotated, stable, bank up the foot, keep the weight on the inside. Or you don't do that. To go this way, you let yourself go. Baseball. You let yourself, you don't even think about this. So let ourselves go into that childlike, playful manner for a second and just explore movement with freedom. Now, we've got to allow ourselves to push off the ground and go up. That opens up the rotations, allows us to actually start transferring this rotation through the system. But there's a shift with it. And as you push off, the trail hip lifts. So there's an elevation, trail hip lifts. What that does is it tilts the pelvis, allows you to rotate, extend, it opens up the rotations, and naturally it's going to take you into a lead side lateral flexion. So you get that side bend for free by allowing your trail side to extend, pushing off the ground, using the ground for that energy here. So if I just imagine looking down at a golf ball, look what's happening already. I'm not even having to think about all this torso rotation. I'm getting it for free by moving the lower body in an efficient way. What we can do now with the slider is we can start with our feet together and we can introduce an early lateral shift. And you can twist the foot in for a little bit more tension in for a real active push off. Very slight shift. Don't go too far or you're going to really restrict how much you can push off. It's just a very small step. Don't even try normal golf stance width. Go even narrower. As you shift, drop at the same time. And then you can push off and let this upper body react. You're getting this rotation right at the end, not early. Not trying to control it with the torso. Imagine throwing and rotating your torso at the beginning, using up all that horizontal rotation at a time when you should just be letting the arms swing, using your lateral, using some push off and letting the rotation happen later. We want that horizontal rotation later in the swing, right at the end. Creates that extra stretch at the end. For the downswing as we drop in, it actually happens in the downswing. If you're following the 1, 2, 3, 4 through our videos on the channel, we're actually continuing. In fact, that's when we get our most powerful stretch through the torso as we're dropping into 3. That's when the real magical stretch happens for that recoil in response to the push off. So we're creating the conditions, we're creating the journey, we're leading into this 3 and 4, but it's the 1 and 2 that's so important, and that's the shift forward and the drop and pop back. That's the 2, the 1 to the 2. You can even allow yourself freedom with the heel. You don't have to push into that heel just for this exercise. Just use the forefoot on the slider. I'm going to talk about pressure shift in a minute when we go to the ground, because that pressure is going to be moving through the foot. But first what we've got to do is get this joint moving 3-dimensionally. It's all about the hip. It's dropping, it's shifting, it's rotating, it's popping. And you're just getting this freedom of movement with the upper body. If you find it hard to twist the foot in, or if you've got some movement limitations, don't worry. Just slide it to the side and twist it out. Play with what you've got. Find the way of optimizing your movement, find your strengths. Now when you take that away, feel it with the friction of the ground. Now you've got this real free chain from the push off. Where you feel that force being applied, you're now reacting with the joints up the chain. And look, the arms, they're freewheeling. You'll see in a lot of my lesson videos, this action. Same thing, look. So you can let your arms swing if you like, back and forth, swinging with your rotation, but almost like marching, and then the arms just get thrown. To be honest, when you pick up the club, you'll probably feel it even more. Just get the club swinging, and this is essentially the 1 and 2 that you see on the channel. 1, 2. 1, 2. Allowing that right side just to freewheel. What we can do now is we can take a little step. So instead of sliding, use the step. And just allow yourself to react with the upper body. So we've got this freewheeling action. Let's amplify it a little bit with some more torque. Most of us aren't using our ankles for rotation enough in the golf swing. The ankles can rotate potentially 25 degrees plus or minus 11. That is a lot of potential rotation, considering with our hips we're looking at maybe between about 35 to 45 degrees of rotation, 30 to 40. You're going to see different people say different things, but say we want 40 degrees of rotation from the hip. We can get potentially, let's say, just 25% from the ankle, leaves only 10-15 from the hip. So if you've got tight hips, which most people have, through modern day lifestyles, through sitting a lot, the hips tighten up, the lower back tightens up, and we have to compensate with other parts of the body. And then we wonder why we're losing control, because we're not using the big joints that are designed for this job. But we can tap into this through the feet, through the ankle, pushing from the front of the foot, say the ball of your foot, the ball of the big toe, which is kind of where you'd apply your pressure to jump, and transfer that pressure through your shoelaces, through the ankle towards the heel, straight through the middle of the foot, and it'll rotate the ankle. Your foot will actually start to invert. You're supinating the foot. So now you're tapping into ankle rotation, and look, the knee rotates with it and the hip rotates. Look at all that freedom with the hip by moving pressure through the foot. This happens naturally when you walk. So what I'd like you to do is experience this now by just putting your feet close together, hip width apart, and take a step forward with what would be your lead foot in your golf swing. So for me, it's my left foot. I'm just going to take a step forward and bend that lead knee. Keep that trail leg extended, keep it straight, and then just bending this lead knee as you plant and then shift forward. What you'll find is your knee starts to collapse as you start to let it bend and shift your pressure forward onto the ball of that lead foot. It'll naturally start to migrate towards the inside of the foot a little bit. As you get in this natural collapse with your lead leg, the trail leg is rotating. And look, the pelvis wants to rotate. And if you allow the torso to go with it too, you've got an externally rotated trail leg, internally rotated lead leg. And if you let this rotate with it, freedom of rotation now here. Look at all this rotation you're encouraging. If I take a golf club, I can do this with a club too. So you can just feel the rotation of the body and notice how, I'm not a massive fan of this word, centered, but notice how there's sway, but it's reduced. So if you find that you're swaying a lot of your body mass in a golf swing, this will be a fantastic exercise for you. Just taking your step forward with your lead leg and letting the knee bend. And as you go forward, the body wants to rotate and allow the pressure to go through that trail foot into the heel. It's rotating the ankle, rotating the leg, rotating the hip. It's allowing the pelvis to rotate freely and allowing your pressure to just shift forward towards the ball of the foot. And look at the natural collapse of the lead side. And guess what? This is what backswing looks like. Once you've done this exercise a few times and allowed yourself, this pressure, by the way, is going to move, and it's probably going to shift, not just from the forefoot to the rear foot, but it's probably going to move, because the foot's supinating, it's probably going to start to move towards the lateral border of the foot. It's going to move certainly lateral of the midline. You might even feel it on the heel slightly towards the outside of the heel. Now, with a normal stance, can you feel those motions with both sides of the body, both legs? Can you feel the pressure moving forward on the lead foot, moving back on the trail foot, giving you freedom of motion with the body to swing the club up? And if we want to lead ourselves into a bit more of a progression into the three, we can sense where it takes us, because remember, this is motion, not positions. Well, how do we feel ourselves load in the downswing now? Well, we can allow ourselves to continue into that three. 1, 2, 3. If you've got a GRF board, you can use the board to assist this. And then you can even let yourself continue into the follow through, the 4 for the finish. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do that again. Feet together, hip width. Swish it forward on 1, drop and pop 2, fall 3, push off for the pop on the 4 to the finish. Go into a golf shot, have a play around. Just exploring the push off. Elevate yourself. And challenge yourself. Bring in the step. Ball in the middle. Bring the right foot across, so now the ball's in line with the right foot. So then when you take your step, you're returning back to a normal ball position relative to you, but feel the drop and pop. So I can feel myself not getting into my 3. Way better. Developing the awareness of your movement enables you to recognise what is good movement, what's potentially not so great, and therefore when you're practicing, You're not just working on whether it's a good shot or not, and working off that and using that as just your sole feedback. You're actually recognising what is good movement and what is potentially bad movement for you. So guys, this is just a little insight into anatomical patterning here for that sequence we need to take the effort out of swinging the arms and the club, using the swing weight, loading the golf club so it can do its job to the best of its ability. And the most important piece of equipment you possess is you, your body, and learning how to use that the best way. So guys, I hope this really helps. Let me know how you get on. Drop the comments below. Try it. Feedback to us, because this helps us shape the tutorials moving forward so we can really address the issues you're experiencing and help you elevate your game and take it to the place you know you're capable of.